Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about who's been in the news, and it's Will Smith, who is the actor who actually won the Best Actor during the Academy Awards. But as most of you know, he got up and slapped Chris Rock over a comment, or a joke, I should say, that Chris Rock made about his wife. And it was pretty dramatic. I mean, who does that? Who gets up and while somebody's on stage performing in front of millions and millions of people around the world, decides they're gonna walk up on the stage and slap someone? Well, Will Smith did. So everyone was kind of, I have to say, in shock. They're like, you know, nobody's ever done anything like this. It's like, it's so unexpected. So I thought I'd show the chart and see what in the heck was going on that night and how astrology could predict his win and his behavior that evening. So before I get going, I always want to remind everyone to sign up for my free newsletter. You're missing out because in my free newsletter, I will deliver all of my predictions every week to your email address. So go to my website, galacticcenter.org, and sign up for my free newsletter. Look at all the great classes that I'm having. Plus, don't forget to check out my beautiful spiritual jewelry while you're there, galacticcenter.org. So now let's put up the chart of Will Smith. And you're going to see there's a lot going on that night. Well, the first thing I want everyone to know that on that night, especially at the time that this event happened, in the sky, the moon and Mars were conjunct, exactly conjunct in Capricorn, around 21, 22 degrees. And, you know, you can always feel it in the air when Mars and the moon are together because the moon is the emotional body while Mars is angry. So you put them together, angry emotions, and even publicly, the moon represents the public. So aside from that, putting all the transits into this chart are really interesting. For one, transiting Jupiter that evening sat at 26 degrees of Aquarius. And that's amazing because it's in his 10th house of his work, career, social standing, and success. And that's a major big deal to win an Academy Award. It takes incredible work to achieve the Best Actor Award. And you could see from his chart that he would win that night. Because when you look at Jupiter at 26 degrees of Aquarius, not only is it aspecting, well, it's aspecting natal Jupiter in the 4th house at 26 degrees of Leo. And at the same time, Jupiter is casting a trine to his moon at 27 degrees of Libra. So the moon is so personal. It is how we feel. And to have an aspect almost exactly on that night, aspecting his moon plus his natal Jupiter, is so telling for success. Now, at the same time, we had transiting Saturn at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So while Jupiter is almost exactly a sign away from Saturn in Aquarius, we have transiting Saturn at 27 degrees of Capricorn. And Mars is almost with Saturn. That is a treacherous, angry aspect, causes all sorts of setbacks and delays. So once again, I'm looking at the transit of Saturn and Mars. They're almost together. And we have the moon tied in right there with Mars, transiting planets. So, looking at that, Saturn sits at 27 degrees, transiting that is. And if you look where his moon is, it sits at 27 degrees of Libra. So actually his moon is getting a double aspect of Jupiter's trine, transiting Jupiter's trine, and Saturn's square. And Saturn's square, 10th aspect, is a doozy. It means just something abrupt happens. But the fact that Jupiter's aspecting it, the moon, means two things. He was upset about something, but he was over the top excited about something else. Because the moon is receiving both the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn. I always say that's a point of manifestation where somebody's going to receive something, because Jupiter gives the opportunities while Saturn gives the discipline and the focus to get there. So put them together, it's a point of manifestation. His natal moon is receiving the aspect of both transiting Jupiter and Saturn. That's huge. But Saturn always has some kind of debt to pay. It's karma. So Saturn's aspect to the moon, probably he felt like he had a debt to pay with Chris Rock, but at the same time, the consequences are going to be met because Saturn is karma. And Saturn is aspecting his moon. And Saturn will aspect his moon not just this one time, but we got 2 more go-rounds to go. So in other words, the transit of Saturn, when it goes forward, then it stops and retrogrades and goes back. It's going to hit that moon by its square a second time. And then when Saturn moves forward, it's going to hit the moon 3 times. So from this event, we've got 2 more major events that are going to be happening while Saturn's still going back and forth in the sign of Capricorn. So in probably around the September through November, when Saturn's going back and forth before it leaves, probably more like November, but before it leaves the sign of Capricorn for good, between now and the end of the year, he's got a lot that he's got to pay some dues for, because we have not seen the end of this event. So looking at this, there are even more aspects, of course, going on, because when I look at a chart, you can't not look at where Rahu and Ketu are. And they just entered into Aries and Libra in March. So the Academy Awards, which were March 27th, we have Rahu and Ketu. Rahu is at 29 degrees of Aries, while Ketu is 29 degrees of Libra. Remember, the nodes travel backwards, so when they enter a sign, it's at the last degrees of the sign. And if you'll notice, Ketu is aspecting his moon. So his moon is getting clobbered by Jupiter, Saturn, and Ketu. So his moon sits in his 6th house. The 6th house is the house of service, helping people, health, healing. It's a lot of healing that's got to come from this, and he is probably going to be put to work to do some kind of social service as a reprimand for this. I get that that's what's going to happen. And, you know, even so, he has lost a lot of his reputation and opportunities. Yes, during the Academy Awards, the audience actually had a standing ovation for him. It kind of goes to show the consciousness of our world today too, doesn't it? So violence is never the answer. Violence is always going to produce more violence. The more whatever you put out, you're going to get back too. So we have not seen the end of this event. Now, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is that when we look at Rahu and Ketu, they will cast trines. And I was noticing that Rahu is even aspecting at 29 degrees of Aries, aspecting Pluto at 29 degrees of Leo. So there is something that's going to come of this that will help change the world in a respect of how things are conducted in the Academy Awards and in other social events like this. So something always has to be the trigger. And that's what I'm seeing. Now, Mars in this chart, you would suspect Mars is doing something really extreme because Mars is the planet of anger. And Mars sits here in Capricorn, and it's in his 9th house, transiting I'm talking about, with the moon and Saturn. So the Mars and Saturn are major triggers together at this time in this evening. So Mars is actually aspecting, well, by a quincunx, which is a 6-8 relationship, to his Jupiter. And it is aspecting, well, it is square to the moon as well. But I think when you put that Mars-Saturn together, it's always going to be some kind of setback, problem, anger, or attack. And they will come together exactly by April 4th and 5th. So we're going to see more of these kind of unstable, crazy behaviors. And one more thing I want to note about his chart, to talk about his talent and who he is, I note that he has the Sun in the 5th house with Ketu and Uranus, which represents the 5th house is creative. It is a house of performing, and it means he's really unusually talented, because looking at this, I mean, Uranus is unusual. Ketu is out of this world in some way, and it's with his Sun. So he has this great talent, but his behavior is very unpredictable. Why? Because that's what Uranus is, unpredictable behavior. It sits with his Sun very tight in the 5th house. And also the 5th house is known to rule, besides creativity, our mind, our intelligence. And I have to say, with this conjunction, he is unpredictable, but extremely talented. So that's enough. I just wanted to give an analysis about how these transits really work in terms of triggering events in our lives. So with that, I'd like to close. Remember, if you would like to study Vedic astrology with me, go to my website, which is my university website, University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.